else that needs to be, or that any commission members would like to see on the agenda for Thursday?
Madam Chair, this is Delegate Adams.
Yes, Delegate Adams.
Yeah, hi. I just think it may be important to address the question of the status of the commission, status of the membership, I suppose, following, the demonstrations from last meeting. I saw the email from Amigo Wade indicating that the co-chair Harris has not resigned. Of course, she's on this meeting now. But the statement was that she was removing herself from the commission, not from just that meeting. And, I just don't know the answer to this, but I'm not aware of any reason that a verbal resignation is not effective in Virginia. And I think that's going to be important before we come back and start taking votes, that we have some clarification as to, what exactly we have here, because I could, obviously we've had other members who have removed themselves from the commission. I think, 2 previous, but, we do, and obviously we have the individual power to resign, but I don't think stands to reason we have the individual power to reassign ourselves to something that has been effectively resigned from. So I don't know if that is, if I think we need to have some sort of legal discussion about that and see where we are prior to moving forward with any votes cast in a meeting that we have a proper quorum.
Madam Co-Chair, can I respond to Delegate Adams?
We've got lots of hands raised, so sure. And then we'll hear from Rick, and then we'll hear from James, and I don't know what the answer is, so maybe council wants to opine something, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think if Delegate Adams wants to go back and watch the live feed, my statement was I removed myself from the commission at this point. That was referencing that particular meeting, not to resign from the commission. Those words did not cross my lips. There's no need for me to try to reinstate myself because I never took myself out of leadership or membership of the commission. Certainly you can do whatever you want to from a legal exploration, but from my perspective, I've never resigned, made that clear to DLS staff, made it clear to the media on Friday, and subsequently those comments or headlines were adjusted to reflect the fact that I'm still a member of the commission. Thank you.
Mr. Harrell.
I just want to say that I thoroughly agree with Delegate Adams. I think a common sense reading of what I heard in person was not what I just heard 5 seconds ago. And I'm not going to argue the point now, but I think it should be an item of discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Bernio.
Madam Chair.
And then Mr. Kumar. We have more hands up about this topic than we did about our procedure. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think this suggestion, this line of discussion kind of shows the point as to why the meeting ended so abruptly on Friday. Madam Co-Chair Harris made valid points. We made valid compromises and it wasn't respected. It also highlights the point and importance of this amendment, at least as I see it. It gives these citizens the ability to take action, whereas legislatures wouldn't. It allows us to interject ourselves in what we think is an unfair and uncompromising process. And it was an important thing to do. I suspect if the Republicans want to have a vote on it we're going to reach the same 8-8 vote. And it's just more of the circle. And this has kind of been my point from day one. Every time that we try to move the ball forward, we've had a cordial discussion today. Now they throw another wrench into the game, and it's just another effort to go around in circles. So I hope that in the line of and spirit of compromise, as we heard so many speeches from the other side on Friday, that we're not going to address this any further and we'll move forward. But if we have to, then we'll have to, and we'll have a vote on it. So thank you.
Mr. Kumar.
I mean, I think this line, Madam Chair, is absolutely absurd. We just heard her clarify. She told staff, she has, whether you agree with how she expressed her frustration in her actions last week or not, the woman has put in, like you have, an amazing amount of work, blood, sweat, and tears away from this, as all citizens have, and the two of you more than anyone. And for anyone to try to raise this, there are members of this commission, including Delegate Adams, who have been non-responsive at times and delayed our work for weeks, if not longer, including people not getting back on stage. And so this is a woman who has put in the work and has said that she is on the commission. Let's just get past this and move forward.
That's Senator Stanley and then Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I would assume that what the Delegate Adams was talking about was perhaps just to make sure, because as we move forward through this, we don't want anything to be challenged later in a court of law that someone might say by her actions, this happened. And so anything that we did thereafter was not right, just, or legal. I take no position as to whether she resigned or not. I understood her frustration and was disappointed when 3 of our commissioners got up and left when we were trying to find a way to continue to move forward. That end result wasted 2 days, wasted Saturday, the opportunity, actually wasted all of Friday. I stayed here in Richmond anticipating working on Saturday and was here Monday anticipating to work on this because we had a deadline. I don't think Delegate Adams is what he's trying to do is stir the pot. I would think, knowing Delegate Adams as I do, probably we just need, if the attorneys are satisfied that by her actions and her words, she did not resign, and that does not affect the commission, then I'm good with it. I certainly do not make the argument that Mr. Brinio or Mr. Hutchins, they said nothing by any means, then create a situation where they had resigned. I don't think that's the issue. I want to move forward. I want to move absolutely forward with due diligence to get these congressional lines drawn. I think if we can put that issue to bed, then that's fine. Let's just move forward. Let's get this done together. Let's pick up where we left off and not give up anymore. But I think, this all just is the frustration that's bubbling underneath with all of us. We've got to put some of this aside one way or the other. But ultimately, I think we wasted the opportunity to actually find a consensus and to get some state maps out in the House and the Senate when those 3 persons got up and left. And that's disappointing. I understand their frustrations. I do. And I'm sure Mr. Kumar is going to be like, here's another speech from Stanley that doesn't match his actions. But I've not been on this commission as long as you all. And certainly I think that's a blessing, even though I've been here for the most contentious part. But let's move forward. But let's not forget how we kind of dropped the ball in the fact that we wasted those days, those precious days where we could have at least given it a shot to get the ball across the goal line. And instead we're here with just a little bit of time left to try to do the work that we can in the congressional maps, or maybe even on a long ball throw, find some consensus on the House or Senate map. So I don't think, and I don't mean to speak for Mr. Adams, but I don't think what he's trying to do is create a stir again, to create this division between Republican or Democrat. I think it's merely, let's get some legal ruling on that. I anticipate that legal ruling will be that she did not resign, and we'll just move forward. But not everything that anybody says always has to be partisan. We are commissioners. We did not guarantee by this law a partisan map. It was a bipartisan effort. That's what it was supposed to be, to not draw a partisan map. And so everybody's just ready to pull the pointed sticks out. And maybe we ought to put them back in the quiver and get back to work, okay? Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Okay, I've got Senator Locke, then Mr. Feliciano, then Mr. Kumar, and then Mr. Abrinio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As much as I would love to agree with my colleague from the Senate, Senator Stanley, much of the discussion up to this point was about how we do move forward. And I thought that we had reached a point where we felt that we could indeed do that. And then we get this comment that does appear to indeed stir the pot and disrupt the commission's work, and have this circling of the wagons of pointing a finger at a commissioner who clarifies what her position was, and that clarification had come already about what the position was. And that in and of itself is disappointing because comments came from commissioners who have been disagreeable with comments that have been made by this commissioner throughout the process. So that is what I find disappointing. That is what I find disruptive. And I'm sorry, Senator Stanley, my dear friend, that is stirring the pot. Thank you.
Mr. Feliciano.
Madam Co-Chair and both Madam Co-Chairs, I'll be clear. Up until a few moments ago, I would have agreed that I believe that Co-Chair Harris had resigned. But at the moment this discussion in the last 10 minutes started, while I'm on this, I went on my other device and watched those moments. And I will say that now I do not believe, I agree with what Ms. Harris said. I don't think she resigned because I listened to it. So I agree with Senator Adams. We need to have lawyers make sure they just cross the T's and dot the I's because, you know, this is America. Everybody's suing everybody. But to other comments about if this came down to a vote and here we are 8-8. I do not believe at this point that Ms. Harris resigned, and I would not vote saying that I believe she did. If that will help anyone thinking that something will come down off party lines in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Feliciano. I want to put it, I don't think we should have a vote at all on this. I think it was a point of clarification from Delegate Adams, and we're getting an answer from, we got something from Dr. Creighton, and I mean, we will move forward and we're going to move forward. So that's, I'm sort of with Senator Stanley on this, that the point was just brought up for protection of legal moving on. And so I don't see any value in sitting down and having a vote for one of our members and then trying to actually move forward and talk. So why don't we go to, okay, let me see, Mr. Abrinio, and then I see Senator Locke's hand back up.
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Abrinio.
And I'm not going to belabor the point. I want to say that I appreciate Jose's comments. It demonstrates genuineness. And all I want to say, there's been a lot of things in the media about what happened last Friday. I just urge everybody, this has been a long process. That was a long meeting. Go and watch the video for yourself and make your own determination. I think that where I'm having difficulty, and maybe it's my fault, maybe this is the way political speak happens, where you have discussions that are articulate and they're persuasive, but at the end of the day, they ring hollow to me. So I would just suggest in the future, if we're going to have these discussions, if my friends on the other side of the aisle are trying to reach out to me personally, let's have a real discussion. And big words and long speeches just aren't persuasive to me. It's frustrating because we're making, I think, serious discussion, and then we hear speeches about how we're failing to compromise. And I'm not trying to, again, stir the spot, but if you're trying to actually be persuasive to me, have a real talk with me. I'm not a politician, and this is not the way I think citizens operate. So thank you.
Senator McDougall, I see your hand up. You're muted.
Thank you. Candidly, I've debated whether I should say anything or not, but a couple comments have spurred me to do it. Talking directly to Mr. Abrinio, I guess, on some heartfelt points, I want to go through in clear speak my perceptions and maybe how we do come across and fail to see each other's points. Y'all may or may not know, but my wife is a college professor at an institution in Central Virginia. Through my political career, there have been more than one occasions when I've had to listen to her tell me about the visceral negative reaction of some of her academic colleagues to votes that I have taken. Those things have been at times very offensive to me because her views are in no way reflected in how I vote. Certainly I listen to her. Certainly she can express her opinion just like every other constituent, but she's her own person. She makes her own decisions. I don't prescribe to teach her classes or tell her how to do her job. And she doesn't do the job for which I was elected. But certainly things like that, listening that her colleagues would not even sit beside her at an academic meeting because of a vote I take, definitely influences how I view the world and how I view things. So as we go through the process of dealing with this commission, I think we all bring in to consideration views and ideas we've had. Certainly those of us in the Senate, I think maybe different than the House, have tried to work very hard over the years because we've had to, because we've either been at 2020 or 2019 one way, 2019 the other way, or some variation thereof. We've tried to work to bring consensus because we know when you throw things up for a vote, sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't, but it's very hard to come to conclusions when you don't bring consensus. Not everybody has liked my position on this. I've had direct conversations with the co-chairs, direct conversations with other members saying, as a group, we need not force things to votes, because at the end of the day, the vote that had to occur would include 3 or 4 legislators and 6 citizen members. So it had to be a consensus. It couldn't be one side jam their ideas down the other. So we went through this process. There were things that frustrated me. I, unlike some of my elected colleagues, felt very strongly that incumbent addresses should not be used. I actually refused to give my personal incumbent address until Ms. Lamb begged me because I was the only one who had not done so. We went through a process where we had a vote on that, came to agreement, and then at one point that changed at somewhere along the way. We had conversations about political data. I think I was one of the few elected officials that said, let's not do political data at the beginning. Let's work through the other guidance that we all seem to come to agreement on, and work things through. When we came to last week, October 1st and 2nd, we had lots of conversations, and y'all remember that I was extremely frustrated on that Saturday when on the Senate maps, and we'll talk specifically about that, when neither map jar came back with what I felt was very clear and explicit direction from the commission to work on Hampton roads and not have Senate lines traverse the Chesapeake Bay. So the peninsula would be together, Southampton roads would be together, and to work toward finding a solution with 5 majority-minority Senate districts. We went through public hearing last week. We heard from many people that was something the citizens also felt were very important. We have all spent a tremendous amount of time trying to come to resolutions through individual conversations, sitting in meetings away from our family and work, and stressful because for all of us, it's a lot of pressure. Last Wednesday, I received a phone call from one of the commissioners talking about, could we find consensus on the Senate map? I thought we could. Said, they told me they were working on something. And I said, great. Said, well, I hope to have it done by early afternoon, 2:30 or 3. The next day, I said, well, I'm in something until about 6:30. So as soon as I get done, we can talk about it or look at it, whatever you would like. I talked to them, the commissioner, on the 7th of October. And in that conversation, they indicated they had not finished it. It was still a work in progress. They were going to try to have it finished for the next day. And I said, look forward to working with you. Please don't make it a surprise. And then we came forward on the 8th. And the 8th, we all knew it was going to be a long day. We were all prepared to spend a lot of time there. I had lined up a babysitter for my daughter that was going to be there till 9:30. So I knew I had most of the day prepared to be there. And through that process, candidly, I was pretty surprised to see a new map that was dropped on us. I had not seen it. I don't know if any other commissioners had seen it. I don't know if any other commissioners had directed that it be drawn, because it seemed to me when we left that on the 2nd, it was pretty clear that we wanted all the maps at that point to be out to the public. Even I remember Meg, because I felt really bad, her anniversary was on the 2nd, and she didn't want to have to load up anything that night. She asked us that I won't get it loaded till tomorrow because her anniversary, and I felt really bad about that. And then as I listened to some of the comments from citizens today and from some of the others, that they feel like some of us have not reasonably compromised. And when you talk about reasonable compromise, it's not dropping a map that the commission is not directed be done, that takes some of the provisions that the commission had agreed on, like keeping existing political subdivisions for counties and cities together, undo that, and then say, if you don't move that particular map forward, you're being unreasonable. On Friday, as I had individual conversations with commissioners, one-on-one, because we couldn't talk in groups larger than 2, I thought we were still working toward a resolution. I was trying, and I thought the other commissioner that I was talking with was trying too. Now, we had some substantive differences of opinion. They were very candid with me in conversations over the telephone early in the week and that night, that they thought compromise on the Senate maps would ultimately result in a map that would elect 22 Democrats. I told them very directly, I did not read the language in the statute to say not favor or disfavor as meaning one political party would have an advantage. And I said, we need to have more maps that are competitive. So when we're talking to each other, I do think it's important that we be clear. I do think it's important that we not talk past each other. And I do think it's important that we understand that from my perspective, I thought Friday of last week was a total sandbag, a total setup. When I saw a map that took some of the public comment from a certain part of the state and disregarded some of the public comment from that certain part of the state to draw a map that looked to me to be a very clear political gerrymander, that I saw in Senate maps 10 years ago. That felt to me like there was not a willingness to come to a resolution. But even through all that, even with that very strong feeling, you have to put that aside. I didn't say, let's stop. I'm not negotiating with you anymore. You totally were dishonest with me with what you led me to believe, and I'm not going to have any more conversations. Said we got to build consensus. We got to work together. I spent the weekend going through probably what would be referred to as the different stages of grief. I was in shock on Friday. I became very angry. My daughter actually made me feel really bad as well, came to me on Saturday and said, did I do anything wrong? I said, no, darling, you didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. You've been very supportive with the amount of time that I've not been able to go to your events or take you to school or talk about your homework over the last month and a half. So when we go forward and come together on Thursday, I hope that all the commissioners, regardless of how you got appointed or selected, will think about those things. Will think about how the actions that are presented seem to other people. And when there appears to be a strong push to a definitive vote to lock in a position, that does not feel like an effort to compromise. That feels very strongly like somebody is trying to lock in a record for the Supreme Court to look at. So I do believe that this commission can move forward, that we can work together. But I think we're going to have to talk to each other honestly and candidly as we do that. I think we're going to have the conversation about what does political neutrality look like? Does that mean what I believe it means? To be clear for any record, is I believe it means no one party is put in control as a result of a gerrymandered map for the next 10 years. I believe it means that there will be competitive elections, that the ideas of the individuals or the parties that they're affiliated with articulate to the public, and the public, through their votes, will decide the individuals or parties that will control the House or Senate or our congressional delegation over the next decade. So when we're coming together to work, let's try not to say, oh, you don't want to work because of this, or you didn't try because of this, and think about how the actions and the statements and some of the way that ideas are presented can make everybody not feel like their ideas are being heard, not feel like there's a real effort to compromise, but make them feel like there's an effort to score points for a record that a court will look at in the future. There are a number of us that are attorneys on this call and on this commission, and we're used to making records. We're used to having our words dissected. I'm sure everything I'm saying is going to be dissected at some point, and a judge or panel of judge or entire court looking at it and make a decision about what we intended or thought or what we wanted to do. We came up with guidance on the legislative maps. At some point in time, our effort to try to make sure we had finality quickly got in the way of us working together to come to a conclusion. So I've not given up my optimism. My daughter, even though she has a flexible learning today, reminded me, said, Diddy, you can still work through problems even when there are differences. It's pretty bad when your 10-year-old has to tell you not to give up and to continue to have hope. But I do still have hope that going forward, we can not talk past each other, not talk down to each other, and that when our actions are one way, that we realize that maybe that is sending a very stark message to the rest of the commission about what our real intentions are. So we can't make any decisions today. We should not make any decisions today because that's the law. But when we come together on Thursday, I hope that we will be talking to each other to build consensus. And again, I beg that this commission not take the path of just throwing up votes to create the record, to try to make sure that when lawyers that are not on the commission argue these to courts, that they're in a better position. That should not be our goal. That should not be what we're trying to do. If we can't work it out, we can't work it out. But it shouldn't be because we were unwilling to try.
Okay, I'm going to say something kind of brief. piggybacking on a little bit of that, and then Mr. Abrinio, absolutely. I did talk to some people over the weekend on both sides, and I would just say that it seemed as though there was just a fundamental lack of trust of each other's motives, and each side was not on the offense but on the defense and suspicious of the other side's motives, and that's kind of how we got here, and it was difficult to kind of recover. I think that hopefully everyone can look across and see that simply because somebody votes a certain way or doesn't like a certain thing, that there might not be just a ulterior motive involved, but maybe there's just a reason, and maybe you need to talk about it and have a conversation. And I would ask that commissioners do that. Have some conversations. Don't lump everybody in. Just because everybody voted a certain way doesn't mean that they all had the same reason for voting a certain way. And it was interesting that both sides thought the same about the other side. We're saying exactly the same things, which just brings us to there's the fundamental lack of trust. And to build that back up, we need to be having the conversations. I know because of COVID, we didn't have the opportunity to get to know each other as maybe we would have liked to. We're all terrified of FOIA and having meetings. Amigos scared me about having meetings because we could talk about something, then it wasn't noticed. But wouldn't this have all have been better if we had gotten to know each other a little more deeply than just, and that's what needed to happen to replace you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. We automatically probably don't agree on anything. So that's how we got here. And it was always in the process. Politics are in the process, and we tried to not have them in the process. It's never going to happen. It's in the statute. Politics is in the statute. Political fairness, we don't even agree on what political fairness means. So I don't know how we're ever able to quantify it. By the way, just to all of the entities who would like to help, I really appreciate that. Our issue really, though, is we don't agree on what it means. So I don't know how we would ever quantify it. But I do want to thank all of the entities for reaching out and trying to help us determine political fairness, but that's a deeper issue. So kind of with that, I hope just moving towards Thursday that everybody maybe picks up the phone and calls somebody that they wouldn't normally talk to or agree with, and just see where y'all are and note that you are more than what your party affiliation is. There's a lot of diverse views in our group. There really is. Everybody doesn't agree. I mean, everyone that I've talked to definitely doesn't agree on a specific issue, but it may lead them to vote a certain way. But that doesn't mean we lump them all together and say you're wrong, and we don't like it and we're failing to compromise. So that's sort of my piece. I didn't really say anything on, I think it was Friday, but that is my observation of how we got here, where we are, to people, to the citizens that got this amendment passed. I know you'll keep working. I think you need to either take politics out or put it in a way that makes more sense. But it did not work this way. But I still think maybe congressional maps, there's still room to talk about it. It'll be less personal. And the incumbency issue isn't the problem. So I think we can keep going. We just have to set aside how we got here and try to keep an open mind and keep the conversation and talk about things, maybe why we disagree, to talk about it instead of just assume the worst on either side. So Mr. Abrinio, go ahead.
So first of all, I want to say to Meg, I apologize if we made you miss your anniversary. It's very unfortunate. And again, I want to thank the DLS staff for everything they've done. So thank you, genuinely. To Ryan, and I'm going to call you Ryan because it looks like we're going to try to have some real talk here. I'm sorry to your daughter. I do not mean to, and I don't think anybody on this commission means to bring her stress. I'm sorry to your wife and whether or not she's mistreated. Individuals that treat other people disrespectfully, I don't agree with that regardless of politics. I don't think that's fair, and I see people even on my side of the aisle be disrespectful. So that's not where I'm coming from. And you got personal, so I'll get personal. On Friday, you all probably know I have a pregnant wife. She's 6 months. I'm super excited. First baby on the way. I missed her first doctor's appointment. I've been to all of the OBGYN doctor's appointment until Friday. And so it's with that I say that I take this duty of service so important, that where you're missing important things like that in your lives, I hope that both of us on both sides of the aisle can say we're taking this duty very seriously. Coincidentally, as Friday's happening, I got a text about a good friend of mine who had some serious health issues. So we all have life that is happening to us. This weekend, because I think of my own stress, you're not the only one who went through the stages of grief. I was so stressed that I ended up calling my therapist, and for just everybody here knows I work with National Alliance of Mental Illness. I want to be open with people. Like, this is real. The stress here is real. And so the goal of NAMI is to end the stigma. Here I am. I'm telling you that the stress caused by this, I had to call my therapist, and he gave me some good advice. And it was as simple as hug your wife. And it was just great. I don't take this lightly. And I can tell you with honesty that our goal was not to sandbag you. The goal there was to offer a 50-50 compromise. Here's your map. Here's our map. We said B7 or B6 or whatever it was because that was the most recent iteration. I hadn't studied it in great detail, but my understanding is it was in response to public comment previously provided. Heck, it was really, and I think we articulated, and that's the frustration that I have here about building records and wondering what journalist sound bites will pick up. Who was right, who was wrong, and trying to win it up in the media. At the end of the day, and I'm going to use I statements, I felt that we had made a very reasonable compromise to begin a starting point so we could have an oriented discussion, get feedback from the public. And what's concerning to me is, and again, I'm not addressing you, but how I feel about the situation is that morning I got a letter in my inbox from the House leader of the House of House of Delegates from the Republican Party saying that because we had not already provided clarification, that he was already going to vote down the maps. That's how I started that morning, getting that letter, that because our lack of clarity and inability to compromise, that he inherently was done with it. And the reality is, even if we do pass legislation or maps here, I've already seen indication that we're going to be sued. We're going to be sued left and right, and there's going to be litigation over the next 10 years. And one of the things that I think everybody is missing here is that the idea of the Supreme Court ending up being the ones drawing the maps is a legal, explicit outcome that was envisioned in this amendment. Having the maps being drawn by the Supreme Court is not a failure because we were unable to compromise as the amendment was intended. It's there as essentially a stopgap. And us as citizens, it interjects us in the ability to say, look, we have lost faith in this commission's ability to draw fair maps. And therefore, we want the Supreme Court to do their duty, which we know they could. Now, I've even seen things about how us citizens that walked out and made a grave mistake because the Supreme Court is conservative and therefore it's going to be conservative maps and all that. I can tell you sitting here today, I don't know what's going to happen in the Supreme Court. I don't think the Supreme Court cares about whether Ryan and I have a disagreement about who is right or wrong. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. You know, I may have in those decisions hurt the Democratic Party overall, but talking about children, again, I'm getting ready to, God willing, I'm going to be a father soon. My ultimate analysis of whether I felt comfortable about the decision I made on Friday and going forward is when my daughter is 10 years old and she starts learning about me, am I happy that I had the best intentions in mind? And that was for the protection of the people of the Commonwealth and making a legal decision and exercising my duty faithfully to the Constitution. I can sleep well at night. I don't know what ultimately happens with all this. I'm here to listen. I'm not here to cast aside things. I'm here to compromise. So I'm just telling you, that's how I feel. And I hope you appreciate that for honesty. You may not, and it is what it is, but I'm just telling you, I'm here to talk if you want to talk.
Madam Chairman, this is Ryan again, and I want to say, James, thank you. And my name is Ryan. Mama did not change my name when I got elected. So it's been that way for 49, soon to be 50 years. And my wife got her PhD in psychology, so I don't have to call anybody to get those types of services because they're readily available, whether I want them or not. I get them very frequently. But I think that this is the type of conversation that is probably important and we needed to have. You had a very strong feeling about a direction of how things were going Friday. I had a very strong feeling about how it was being set up politically in a negative direct way, and thought I was working through in individual conversations a pathway forward that could come up with a resolution. And we all just talked past each other through life's interferences, through stresses. I know about family illnesses and challenges, and I know about very high risk childbirth, and so I can understand the stress that puts you under in direction. And I appreciate you being willing to talk about that here today, and the fact that we are talking, and as a group, this is the first time anybody's in Virginia has done this. I think our setup is different, if I understand from what Meg has told us over the years, than other states. It is not an easy process, and the more we can have the conversations and learn lessons, hopefully we get it right on congressional districts, but regardless, somebody will be able to learn about processes and directions after us for the next group to do it. Because I promise you, in 10 years, I will not be on this commission, because there's no way in heck I would ever accept an appointment again in the future.
I think we've.
But thank you,
consensus
James.
on that. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have had the airing of the grievances for any Seinfeld fans at this point.
Well, Madam Chair, this Delegate Adams.
Yes, Delegate Adams.
Right. And, really, again, to my point, it was raising the legal question, and, whether we, acknowledge it or not, the words and the actions we take have legal ramifications, and we have counsel. And I think this is something that needs to be looked into in terms of what I raised. Now, I think as far as the discussion that ensued after I raised it, I mean, that really highlights, I think, a lot of what we've seen before. And, I'm not going to return in kind the, challenge to motivations. In my professional career, that's just not acceptable. And it's certainly not helpful in trying to reach a consensus. I mean, there have been times during the course of this commission's work, with the area of the state that I'm most familiar with, I've sided with the Democrat map maker, for instance. Every vote hasn't gone my way, but I haven't complained about a vote that didn't go my way, because I kept moving forward. And likewise, it never even occurred to me to challenge the motivation someone may have, and especially not to do so publicly. I really think that has been, and I think this has been suggested before by other commissioners, that is probably one of the worst thing that's been tolerated, and really just came to a head on Friday. And so I too would like to see that aspect, where comments are made from objective standpoints, and recognizing that people come from different perspectives. That's how it should go forward in a professional way. And so, on this question, on this specific legal question, it's not, I'm not calling for a vote. Obviously, we should, if the legal memorandum or whatever it is that comes back, or just, thoughts from the attorneys after they look at this, and it's a clear answer, one way or the other, we have a clear answer. If it's up to interpretation or debate, then, I'm not calling for a vote on this. I'm not looking to do that. Then we'll take the decision of Co-Chair Harris on her position and what she's deciding to do, and we'll just go forward. But in terms of it being something that as a legal matter needs to be looked at. There's just, I think that's very reasonable and ought to be done before the next round of votes are cast. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Dr. Creighton's position is in writing already. He had to leave, so I'll just put that to Mr. Tyson. You can confirm or not confirm. Just let us know maybe by the end, maybe by 1 p.m. Is that too short a notice? And then we can have something documenting, we can have it in writing, and we can move forward. Does that work for you, Mr. Tyson?
Madam Co-Chair, yes,
Okay.
I think we can make that work. Mr. Bartolomucci we're going to look at this, and so I don't think that's a
Excellent.
reasonable timeline.
And so we just have something documenting, and it'll be documented, and we will be good. We'll be good moving forward. Okay, I really don't want to ask if anyone else has any other things they would like to bring up at this point. I think we are at a wonderful stopping place. We've done public comment.